What's up, guys? Um, Another video, right? So, interestingly enough, I think like our background here is gonna become a meme at some point. I honestly don't know when, but this is just always the background for my videos. I always choose to do videos on my freaking sitting on the patio swing for some reason. I don't know why, but this is gonna be a video on something that um I don't know. It's more so in terms of sociology, psychology, a little bit of my journey in there. I think this recording and the topic is best gonna be explained through the title that I give this video. So, if you guys are watching my channel, most of y'all have tuned in to the channel because y'all know that, I am schizoid. But, I've read a lot of literature, even with Greenberg, um, and Rollo May, and even some of the like continental philosophy. I haven't really gotten into the whole continental philosophy texts or whatever because I just don't like their prose. It like bores me to death. But really reading stuff like Rollo May, you know, Lang, of course, with the disordered self, of course, Greenberg's book. They talk about the fact that the world right now is typified by the schizoid condition. Now, what do I mean by this? Of course, Greenberg, I've talked about this in previous videos. She labels that there is an age of narcissism, an age of borderline, and now we live in an age of schizoids, right? So, like, your age of narcissism would be, you know, big business. You think of like the factories, like the big corporations, like 60s, 50s types of guys, whatever. And then like your borderline age would be like, like your hippie movement, sexual revolution, this, that, and the third, where everybody is just, giving up their bodies, giving up their selves to other people without no discretion whatsoever. And now you live in the age of schizoids where it's an age where everybody is alienated from the outside world. Okay. Now, with Lang, the alienation from the outside world is not just the outside world. Of course, it's the body in itself as well. You sort of feel like you are disconnected from, the body, and you're disconnected from the persona and, the ego. More so, it feels like you're sort of trapped within your individual existence. You're trapped within your own head, and this thing that is playing you on the outside isn't really the real you. So that's really what the schizoid condition is. Now, these people talk about us living within the schizoid age. Now, do we live in the schizoid age? Do I believe that we live in the schizoid age? Honestly, I think that we do. I mean, it could just be the small stuff. The people that we hang around on an everyday basis. For a lot of people, you have a 9 to 5 work week. So a lot of the people that you hang around most of the time be your workers, co-workers, your bosses. And, I mean, we all know the slang. We all know the common term that your coworkers aren't your friends. So you're around people 24/7, and you have a relationship with them that isn't real. You have no connection to them whatsoever. When it comes down to relationships, a lot of relationships aren't really real. They're really just commodity based, give and take, this, that, and the third. There's like a show on the internet. A lot of y'all are older than me, so I don't know if y'all are hip to it. It's called Pop the Balloon. I think that that show is a very good example of what I'm talking about when I say that a lot of relationships are schizoid. A lot of relationships are merely based around you're literally dating and spending the rest of your life with a projection. You're not reclaiming that projection and experiencing the other person as a genuine person. You're literally just projecting an ideal, projecting a fantasy onto a person, and you're dating that person. Like you'll see on Pop the Balloon where, you know, the women and the men just be having the most stupidest standards, and they be popping the balloon over the most minutest details that really don't matter whatsoever. And a lot of these people be leaving with no partner at all. So, relationships are fake. Work is fake. Um, a whole lot of your friendships now at times. A lot of people, their friends are on Discord, or they have friends on online gaming or whatever, and that's cool and all that, but you don't know if these people are actually who they say they are. You don't know if the persona and the um self-expression that they're giving on social media and that they're giving on online gaming is their actual real life self. So there's a disconnect there. Everywhere within society, there is a disconnect between the outside and the inside, right? Like, nobody really cares about the internal nature of a person. They just shut that off and they just merely want to experience the external nature of who people actually are. And most of the time, they experience that external nature just because they know it's easier to project onto that part of a person. So a lot of it is really just people are really either not interacting with the world at all. They're just like cut off. Like the world is becoming more and more where people are really just going to be shut up in their house all day playing video games and on VR and on social media platforms and this, that, and the third. That's really going to be the future, if we're not careful. Like a lot of people in the community talk about the fact that, they're the type that be in their room a majority of the time. But, that's going to be the norm. That's not just going to be, you know, schizoids. Schizoids are going to be the norm. The same way that the narcissist is the norm when it comes to the um, social media world. The same way that the borderline is the norm when it comes to intimate relationships, and how nobody really trusts anybody. The schizoid is going to be the norm when it comes to the societal world. We're going to live in a society to where you're literally cut off from reality, and the reality that they give you is very much what some postmodern thinkers call like the hyper real, whatever, where it's real enough to where you don't have to experience the actual phenomena, because you're given the phenomena in such a enticing way to where, like I said, you don't need the real thing. Like the hyper real would be like a glistening red apple. Now, in the real world, there's no such real thing as like a glistening red apple. That's very rare. But in a hyper real sense, there can be a glistening red apple. It's just going to be a world where we're interacting with fantasies that we make up in our head. Now, what does this mean for the schizoid? Or what does this mean for, I guess, a person like me? How do I see this? There's a book called Fate and Destiny, right? I don't know if that's the exact name of the book. I've read it, but the book is by Michael Meade. And the thesis of the book, what the book talks about, is the fact, Michael Meade, he's explaining his journeys and he's using his real life to talk about how fate and destiny works. You have fate, which is unavoidable events in your life, and destiny is you trying to articulate what these things mean and what they mean for pretty much how you act in the world. Now, for me, being a schizoid man in a schizoid society, the thing that this means for me is that through my own self-healing, I can sort of pinpoint ways as to how to sort of better society, or at least better a community through what has worked for me. Okay, so what has worked for me? I talk about working out, and I deleted a short. I don't know if y'all remember the short where I was talking about the fact that I was trying to reach 15 pull-ups. I reached it. By the way, I reached it. I'm like at 17 right now. But anyways, back to the video. Anyway, working out. And the thing with working out is it sort of keeps you from articulating like this false idea that your body isn't like a reality. Now, of course, you have a lot of Taoist and Buddhist thought that talks about the fact that you're not your body, you're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, and that's fine. But even if your body is illusory, your body is still a phenomena. It's still something that is occurring, and you still have to pay acknowledgement to it. Of course, you don't have to be ruled by it, but you still have to acknowledge it, and you still have to cultivate it, and you still have to use it to traverse the real world. And when you're somebody that is naturally prone to wanting to experience reality in this safe environment inside of your own head, putting yourself into an activity that forcibly places your awareness outside of your head and onto your body it's helpful. You know what I mean? Like if you're doing like freaking heavy weights, or you have a pretty good amount of weight on like a calisthenic exercise, you're not in your head, in la la land. You're trying to maintain proper form, this, that, and the third, so you don't freaking tear a pec, so you don't freaking get a pec tear, or, tear a rotator cuff. You're not in your head, so that's very helpful. So that's helped me out a lot. Of course, meaning, existentialism, right? That's another thing that is a problem for us schizoids. We're very deep thinkers, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Because, we're deep enough to where we take human thought and we take human phenomenology to its very brink. A lot of us are into the occult, we're into the esoteric, and, we're not into the occult and the esoteric and like the fake fuzzy wuzzy sense that you see like in a lot of new age stuff. It's really about the forbidden knowledge. It's really about the knowledge that when you really think about it, it really tears up your head. Like, what is the meaning of me doing this over and over again? Like those types of questions. Schizoids have those questions. But, when you read about existentialism, absurdism, even cosmicism, which cosmicism seems like that it would be a negative philosophy. oh, there's a philosophy out there that says that I'm a instrument of higher cosmic forces that I can't control or whatever. But when you pair that with something like stoicism, or even like I said, absurdism, it can be fruitful because you sort of go throughout life knowing that there's something there's something behind it. You might not be able to point your finger at it, but you know you know that there's something. And for those people that don't believe in that sort of stuff, you know that is also the point. Trying to figure out, well, Jalen, I don't agree with you. Well, if you don't agree with me, then tell me your meaning. Tell me your perspective. That's really what I'm just saying. I'm just saying have a perspective. It doesn't have to be my perspective, but having a meaning to life, right? It's the same. It sort of does the same thing where I was talking about for exercise. If exercise is places you inside of the body, existentialism and all of those philosophies that are similar to it places you in the world. It gives you a perspective of the world, and it makes you want to experiment with what that perspective means for you, and what that perspective means in regards to how you should act. So, you know, when all this is said and done, we're going back to the ideas that I was talking about with my "We Need Anchors in Reality" video. All of this stuff is merely to anchor you into reality. All of this stuff is merely to anchor you into a realist based system. If that realism veers towards pessimism, so be it. If that realism veers towards optimism, so be it. But there has to be an investment in what is actually going on around you. That's how I solved, my problems. Of course, I still have problems. Like, recently I was dealing with, the schizoid dilemma again. Even though I've sort of gotten a, I'm sorry, y'all, I want to sneeze and I don't got tissue like around me, so I'm trying to hold it in. But back to what I was saying. Even though I've sort of understood that, okay, with depression, it's serotonin. So I need to work out, I need to sleep, and coffee can't hurt either. Boom, done. Um, Again, with disassociation, right? Just doing things to keep me grounded in the world will help me out a lot, okay? Boom, done. The schizoid dilemma, I was dealing with that bad, bro. I was dealing with that bad like all last week where, you know, trying to find people to relate to, but not really trusting anybody to relate to begin with. You know what I mean? Like, I was dealing with that recently. So that's still a problem. So I'm not saying that um, I've got all the solutions, but there's solutions that I've done that have worked. And when we sort of do a micro macro and we do a comparison with what I've been doing and how I see the world, if the whole world was doing these things, we would be a lot better off. Like, we live in a world to where people are either, when it comes to their bodies, they see their bodies as, not really being that important. So they don't exercise, they don't walk, they don't take care of it. Or they see their body as like this hyper real construct. So they, get surgeries and take steroids, whatever, and, on down the road, they BBL is loose, or, they got heart problems and they're dead 30 years earlier than they were supposed to be. So, the body's hyper real or it's non existent. People, like I said, again, I've already talked about this stuff. Lack of meaning, the lack of the lack of myths in America video or whatever. I've talked about this stuff. there's a lack of meaning in the world. When you talk to a person, they're not thinking about, okay, what do I want to really do with my life? They're thinking about how to make money, which isn't a bad thing because you need money to survive. I'm not going to be those people that say that money doesn't matter. Money does matter, but your existence as a human being, your existence not just as a human being also, but your existence as pretty much a being in existence itself. You got to think about that too. You can't just think about, like level one of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you having money to survive. Once you got the money to survive, you got to think about, okay, like, what's next? How do I feel like I, am supposed to self-actualize? How do I feel like I'm supposed to self-transcend or whatever? These are things that you need to be thinking about in order to have a meaningful life. And, money can still be a part of that, but maybe, like I said, maybe you place money above even itself to where you're like, I want to have generational wealth. That's something more than just I want to make money, or I want to transform money into like actual sustainable hard resources. Like I want to buy stuff on the stock market, or I want to make investments in like metals, or I want to start a business. Things like that. Just thinking higher, having meaning, having purpose. That's even exempt. You know, and all of these things that you know are inherent within schizoid pathology and that lead to our suffering, they're becoming pathological conditions within everyday society itself now. Like I said, we're going to live in an age to where the schizoid person is going to be the normal person, just like the narcissistic social media personality is the normal person right now. It's gonna be inevitable. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of books right now, when it comes down to sociology or anything in that field. You know what I mean? Like humanistic psychology, that sorts of stuff. You're gonna There's gonna be a paragraph in there that talks about the schizoid condition. Like some author is gonna talk about it. Like Fromm talked about it to a certain degree. Like I said, Rollo May, like you're just gonna it's just becoming more. It's becoming more and more prevalent within literature. So, like when it comes down to fate and destiny for me, like I said, I think that me being schizoid has allowed for me to have a better grasp of how the world actually is, because how the world is, it's really a reflection. The world is becoming more and more a reflection of myself, which I'm not saying that in the sense of projection. I'm saying that in the sense of there's similar qualities about it that I notice within the maladaptive behaviors that I'm prone to, right? So I think that's just I think that that's something to ponder if you're schizoid. The fact that things around you are becoming schizoid as well, you know. And that's another thing that I talked about. I talked about how a lot of us with personality disorders, we're shitted on, but the world is full of maladaptive constructs that when you look at them are signs of a personality disorder. Yeah, I'm the problem. But the world isn't the problem, even though it has the same symptoms. But anyways, this recording is about to go on half an hour, so I'm gonna just go ahead and end it. But, if you guys want to comment, then, just comment like, do you guys notice things about the world or, like behaviors or norms within the world that are similar to your mental health problems? And it doesn't even have to be schizoid. If you're not schizoid, then you can just comment anything. Cause I'm pretty sure with how fucked up the world is right now, if you got any form of mental illness, you can find some element of the world that is reflective or that is similar to what you got going on. But anyways, this is Jalen signing out. Peace.